modest apparel. Because what constitutes modest apparel in the country we live in the society we live in, constantly changes. Okay? Just so you understand this, at one time, it was immodest for a woman to expose her ankles or her arms in this country. Let me help you understand. If you just take the ladies that are inside this room, transported every lady in this room back to the beginning of the 19th century, you'd have been considered immodest. Let me take it one step further. Would it have only been the clothes that would have made you immodest?
No.
What else?
Makeup.
Makeup would have made you immodest. What else?
Hair.
Your hair hanging down would have made you immodest. No woman up until almost the 40s would not go to church with her hair hanging down. That was immodest. Do you know where that even came from?
No.
Let me help you understand this. You realize that, see, for us, it's kind of hard for us to understand this because a lot of the traditions that we have come based on things that people understood from the scriptures. And so what you have to understand, in ancient Palestine, or even to this day, an unmarried woman does not walk around with her hair down. Many cultures now with that without her head uncovered.
Right.
Because that's immodest. The only women, you know the story about when Jesus is actually at the Pharisee's house eating, and the woman's there crying, and she cries at his feet and washes his feet with her hair. Now the reason that he made an implication that if he knew what type of woman this was, he would not let you touch it, because this woman was walking around with her hair down.
Yeah.
Only women, the loose women, did that. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because a lot of times we think that immodesty, now this is a very trying subject. Modesty begins with where I'm at. In other words, as long as your dress is right here, then you're okay. Like, wait a minute now. There's a lot of places you can go in the world and you'd be considered immodest, and they would not even want you to come to church looking like that. In the world today, let me help you take you one step further. Y'all do realize that the faith that we have is not a Western, did not start in what we call the West. It's an Eastern religion. You know, the Lord's church has always been in existence, even to this day, in ancient Palestine, in Israel, still in Syria. Let me help you understand something, ladies. If you're going to go to church in Syria, do not insult them people by walking in there the way you dress right now.
Amen.
Because you say, well, I'm American. No. When you go over there, you will cover your head up because you're insulting people now. And see, a lot of times we never think about that. So when we're talking about immodesty, we have to ask ourselves this question. What does the scriptures reveal about immodesty? Because what we have to understand, it changes constantly. And it's important that we understand some biblical principles first. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make it where we understand things a little bit better. Okay? So, you know, one of the things that we're sitting watching TV one evening. We're laying in the bed, flipping through the TV channel, and all of a sudden we see these people down in the jungle of South America called the Yamalapidi. Remember that? You watching that? The Yamalapidi, right? And I'm like, what are they wearing? Oh, wearing nothing. Now here's the interesting part. I saw that they were wearing nothing, but they didn't see it that way. Okay? So what happened was the young ladies and stuff would walk around and they had this little belt that looked like little beads on a piece of string that went around their waist.
Yes.
Now they had these little lines drawn on them with some of the not tattoos, but a little ink that they put on their body. But they had this little string around their waist. Nothing else. They had a little headband on their head and a little string around their waist. Now, Jim, here's the point. When I was actually watching this show and they were explaining what's happening about why the girls, ladies would go out with especially the young ladies, it's specific to the young ladies, because some of the old ladies wore a little bit more than that, with this little belt around their waist. Because if they walked outside without that little belt around their waist, they were considered naked. I thought to myself, like,
They were considered naked.
they were considered immodest.
Oh,
They were considered loose.
yeah.
Now keep in mind, this little belt didn't cover nothing. No belly button, no nothing. It didn't cover nothing. But in their culture, it's considered naked.
Oh, wow.
So different places you can go in the world, and certain things can be considered immodest or modest. Okay? Now, what you have to understand is, you can go to the scriptures to get an understanding of what nakedness is. Okay? But when it comes down to fashion and apparel, we have to understand what is modest and what isn't modest. Even Paul addresses that issue. even when it comes down to the church. So we need to make sure that when we're addressing things, we address things from the standpoint of the scriptures, okay? So one of the things I try to explain is that to truly understand what modest is, you have to understand what modest is not. You see, if you think about the word modest, what does that mean to you?
Casual.
Casual? See, she said casual. What?
Decent.
Decent? In between formal and informal? You see how far we go with this?
I'm thinking mean covers.
Huh? Not exposing anybody parts?
Like you're not the body parts, but too short or too exposed to your.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, yeah,
Yes.
you don't want to,
Show things you should not be showing? See what I'm saying? Think about this. All these things were modest, okay? So let me ask you a question. So let's say, for example, not exposing body parts and things like that. So what happens so here's the question. Let's say, for example, I showed up next Sunday, right? And I'm covered head to toe. All the way down to my sleeves, all the way up to my neck and everything, but I'm wearing an Elvis rhinestone suit. Like Elvis Presley. A rhinestone suit like Elvis Presley, right? Now here's the question. I'm covered up everything, but would that would fit in the realm of modest?
No.
No, that's like over.
What if Cecilia comes in, she's dressed from head to toe, you can't see her ankles, you can see her shoes, you can't see her wrists, you can only see her hands, okay? And she comes in here wearing a Diana Ross gown that if you hung up in the middle of the building, spin around, she'd be like that thing that puts sparkles everywhere.
Right.
Is that considered modest?
No, that's not.
You see, what we have to understand is that even though it covers everything, we like to define modest as where it comes and define where it ends and begins with us, what we think, okay? When really, there's something very, very important that God wants us to see concerning modesty, okay? That will go across the board, okay? And what you have to understand is that you'll see, even from the scriptures, I'll prove in the scriptures, that what is considered shameful or not, okay? God will tell you what shameful is. But when it comes down to apparel, you have to understand shameful dress is decided by the people and the culture and the area that you're in. When it comes down to what you do inside the church as far as your activities and what you say inside church, that is not a cultural thing.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So we're going to see the difference that he makes the difference between the two. So, Cecilia used to do a class with the ladies in the past. We have Sister Jones who just started doing a class with the ladies also. And it's important that the ladies address this with the ladies. Right. It is not something that I can address the men. You know why? Because if I want to talk to a 15-year-old, a 20-year-old, or a 30-year-old man, I've been 15, 20, and 30-year-old man before.
Yes.
So I speak that language very, very fluently. Okay? I've never been a 15-year-old girl before, or a 20-year-old girl, or a 30-year-old lady. You know? I know some people try to, like Bruce Jenner was a 15-year-old man and a 20-year-old man and a 30-year-old man, and then became a 60-year-old lady. It's like, how he did that? I don't know. So I don't have that experience. That's a bad joke. Let me stop that. Anyway, just for the record, women, do not take any woman advice from Bruce Jenner. Don't do that.
Don't take
He has no clue. He has no clue.
No.
Here he is, he became a woman at 60-something years old and became Time Magazine Woman of the Year. Ain't that some junk?
You eat too many Wheaties.
Huh?
You eat too many Wheaties.
How did you become a woman of the year? Sammy, you remember how many years you got being a woman? He beat you. Isn't that insulting? Anyway, let me stop. Let me keep moving on. So, what we have to understand, I don't try to answer all these questions as definitive because we recognize that modesty in dress has changed considerably, okay? And today, even the most modest of dress today in this room, you say, who's dressed most modest in this room today? Even the most modest of dress in this room today, in times past in this country, would have been considered scandalous. Yes? You'd have been scandalous. Yes, you'd have been scandalous. Yes, you'd have been scandalous.
No stockings.
If you just showed up just the way you dressed today, inside the church, and 75 years ago, it would have been considered scandalous the way you're dressed right now. Do we ever consider that when we're trying to teach other people? So, what we need to do is we need to understand why we're drawing this conclusion. Okay? First of all, we need to understand that there's some basic concepts here taught from the scriptures. I'm not trying to answer questions, so I'm not going to say your dress should not be more than an inch higher than a knee. That's something that people came up with. That ain't what God said. But I want us to consider what the Bible has to say and to provide a basic concept to help us to discern between good and evil. Okay? So, for the first example, we need to understand that it is shameful to expose one's nakedness. It is shameful to expose one's nakedness. Okay? Let's go, if you would, to Genesis chapter 3. Now, we all know this story. As a matter of fact, I may have to lead up to it just so we can get this. Okay. So, in Genesis chapter 2, at the end of Genesis chapter 2, let's look at what happened here. Okay? And forgive me. I'll be walking funny today because I pulled a muscle in my leg yesterday, so I got two bad legs. Well, I always had two bad legs. I got two really bad legs now. So anyway, in Genesis chapter 2, it says, verse number 23, it says, and Adam said, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. So you understand, this is Moses explaining how God actually instituted marriage, right? Notice what he says here next. He says, and they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. Okay? So here's the question we have to ask ourselves. Why was it when God actually made man and woman in the Garden of Eden, right? They were naked, right? They were married, they were naked, and they were not ashamed. Why were they not ashamed?
They didn't know.
They didn't know what?
They didn't know the difference between
That it's shameful.
the shameful, good and bad.
They were innocent.
They were innocent. They had no concept of nakedness because they had not experienced sin. They had not experienced lust. They had no clue of these things. You see, what you have to understand is that when there's true innocence there, right? When there's true innocence there is no concept of nakedness. For example, I can remember when Cecilia actually bought a little kiddie pool for our kids, right? Put the little kiddie pool out in the front yard. In the front yard, right? And so some kids came by the house to play with my children, right? They did not have any swimsuits that day. Did that stop them from getting in that pool? No. What did they do? They took their clothes off, swam in the underwear in the front yard, boys and girls. No, why? Because they were 3 and 4 years old. There was no shame in their game at all because they had no concept of lusting or looking at someone in the wrong way. Right? Adam and Eve had no shame because there was no understanding of sin at all. No understanding of right or wrong. And see, kids, children, you understand why children, this is not even my subject, you don't understand why children are not lost.
No, they're not.
Because they're innocent. They have no concept of sin. Right? So here's the point. You understand something happened after that. And what happened after that is that after they had the verse in chapter 3 and verse number 6, it says that when the woman saw that the tree was good for food and that it was a pleasant to the eyes and a tree to desire to make one wise, she took the fruit thereof and gave it unto her husband with her, and he did eat. And the eyes of them both were open, and they knew that they were naked. Okay? And they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. Now, this is important that we catch this now. They sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. Now, after they made themselves aprons, Adam still hid himself from God. God said, Adam, where are you? He says, I heard you walking in the garden, right? And I was afraid, so I hid myself because I was naked. He said, Adam, who told you you were naked? Where'd you get that from? Now, this is important that we catch this. They had no clue of being naked at first, right? Now that their eyes of right and wrong has been opened up, right? They sewed themselves aprons together, but Charmaine, he still felt that he was naked, didn't he? Now, when you think of an apron, what do you think of? What does an apron actually cover? What does an apron cover? Lower front, right? We know what aprons are, right? So they had aprons, but Adam and Eve still felt that they were naked, right? Let's keep reading now. Let me just get down to the point here. Oh, here we go. So in Genesis chapter 3. So, beginning in verse number 20, it says, and Adam called his wife named Eve, because she was the mother of all the living. And unto Adam also and his wife did he, the tongue of the Lord, make coats of skins and cover them. Now, what is the difference between an apron and a coat? So they actually covered themselves with an apron but still felt naked.
Yes.
And God gave them a coat
Yes.
to cover everything.
Yes.
Okay? Everything that would be considered shameful for you to be shown.
Amen.
Did y'all see it?
Yes.
So here's the thing. Now, when it comes down to between husbands and wives, there are certain things between a husband and a wife. It should not be a big deal with seeing each other naked, because you'll see inside the scriptures that's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But you'll see again and again when in the Old Testament he's giving instructions to other people saying, like, you shall not uncover the nakedness of your neighbor's wife, and you shall not cover the nakedness of your daughter. You should not uncover the nakedness of. So in other words, he's telling you, you don't uncover those things that God considers naked, and we're going to see that after a while. But I'm just trying to make some basic observations here. So the first thing we need to understand is that based on what we saw from the beginning, we recognize that once sin came in, there were certain things when uncovered was considered shameful. Am I making this up, or did you see it? All right. Okay. So what you have to understand is it was shameful then, according to what God was actually speaking at that particular time, what Moses was actually revealing to the Hebrews at that time, that it was shameful to expose what we call private body parts. Because they put an apron. It didn't say they put shoes on their feet. It didn't say they put a hat on their head, right?
No.
Right? Put an apron on. And put a coat on, what we call what some people say, well, a tunic. It wasn't like a coat with buttons like we have, but something that a tunic was something, or what we call a coat, like Joseph's coat of many colors. It wasn't a coat like we have. It was something that covered you totally. Okay? And he made it out of skin also. Okay? Animal skin. So it is shameful to expose private body parts. Okay? An exposure of such parts was often a form of judgment intended to shame the wicked. Now it's important that we catch this. Turn your Bibles to Isaiah chapter 3, verses 16 and 17. Isaiah chapter 3, verse 16 and 17. So, in Isaiah chapter 3, here's Isaiah prophesying on behalf of what God is actually saying. God's judgment. It says, verse 16, moreover, the Lord said, because the daughters of Zion are haughty. Now, who's the daughter of Zion? Zion is Jerusalem, okay? The daughter of God's people, Zion, the city people, okay? Because the daughters of Zion are haughty and have walked with stretched forth necks and wanton eyes, walking and mincing as they go, and making a tinkling with their feet. In other words, let me explain to you what he's actually saying. They're haughty. They think they look good. They want everybody to look how good I'm looking. Right. They have little bells on their feet, okay? Right. Wanton eyes, like, look, you know you want some of this because I want some of that, right? That's exactly what he's talking about, okay? Right. And he goes on and says, in verse 17, therefore the Lord will smite with a scab the crown of the head of the daughters of Zion, and the Lord will discover their secret parts. Discover means uncover. Yeah. Now, what you have to understand is, remember when Jesus was actually being hung on the tree, hung on the cross. You have to understand, through the old law, when people were hung on the tree, they were hung up there naked. Yeah. They weren't hung up there with the little robe that you see that got in the picture with Jesus. They were hung up there naked. Why? Humiliation, to shame them. Because body parts, certain body parts, when open to the public, everybody see, was to shame an individual. Okay? And this is what he's saying. Because they're doing this, you know, I'm going to shame them publicly. Okay? Let's also look in chapter 47, verses 1 through 3 of Isaiah. In chapter 47, Isaiah chapter 47, beginning verse number 1. It says, "Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Sit on the ground. There is no throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans. For thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. Take the millstone and grind meal. Uncover thy locks." In other words, take that off your head. This ain't no, you got no place of honor here. Take that cover off thy locks. Make bare the leg. Uncover the thigh. Pass over the rivers. Thy nakedness shall be uncovered. Yea, thy shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance, and I will not meet thee as a man. So in other words, what we need to understand is that when it came down to exposure of one's nakedness, in using this particular case, it was done purposely to shame a person. Okay? Paul also alludes in the New Testament about body parts. Let's look at 1 Corinthians chapter 12. In 1 Corinthians chapter 12, you see, we see this all the time, but many times we never take the time to look at these things, okay? He alludes to this fact. In 2 Corinthians chapter 12, look at it says beginning in verse number 23. "And those members of the body, which we think to be less honorable, upon these we bestow more abundant honor. And our comely parts have more abundant comeliness. For our comely parts have no need, but God hath tempered the body together, having given more abundant honor to that part which lacketh." Okay? Now, what you have to understand, he said that there are certain parts that are comely and uncomely. Who knows what the word comely means? Presentable. Okay? Comely. In other words, there are certain parts of your body that are not lacking. They don't need anything. Right? Your face don't need anything. Okay? But there are certain things to make them presentable have to be covered up to make them more presentable. You know, in other words, if for example, if my wife walks in and she's dressed really, really nice, I'm like, "Man, you look really nice today," right? And if another man says, "Hey, Cecilia, that's a nice dress, you look really nice today." Now, what are you saying? You know, your outfit, the way your hair is done, okay? You look really nice today, okay? There's really nothing she has to do to her face for him to say that your face looks really nice today. But careful thought has to go into the way she dresses for another man to say, and still be innocent before God, "You look nice today." Because some parts are comely and some parts are uncomely. And we put more effort into the uncomely parts to make them more presentable, more comely. In other words, implying that there's certain things that can be seen all by themselves with no problem, no shame in it at all. There's certain things have to be presented a certain way to be seen as beautiful. Okay? I'm just trying to get us to understand this whole analogy here. Okay? He's using this idea in the scriptures. That's when it comes down to the church. There are certain positions that many people, that is out that people can see. The preacher's easy to see. Okay? But see, there's a lot of stuff that goes in the background that nobody ever sees, that many times has to be brought up to understand just how much work goes in for the church functioning the way it should, even though the preacher's the one who always gets seen, the song that always gets seen, but there's a whole lot more work going on that really sometimes has to be presented so people can see just how beautiful it is. That's the idea. He used this idea of comeliness and uncomeliness to help us understand. Look up the word comeliness and you'll understand what I'm talking about. Okay? So, what we need to understand is that there are certain parts that are unpresentable without help. So at some point there needs to be a line where a line where the shame can be crossed. In other words, there's a line where there's modesty, and then there's that line that once you cross that line, it is no longer modest, it is considered shame. And these are the parts of the body that should remain private. See, perhaps we determine that we've determined these based on our own understanding, but many times we never understand that what something that's considered shameful or not is really based on the society that you live in. You see, what you have to understand is that in our culture, what would you have to do? In other words, if a lady walked in today, let's just say, I'm going to let only the ladies answer this today. Only the ladies, no guys, okay? I'm trying to keep you out of trouble, okay? Only ladies. Okay, ladies, what's the line? What's the line in this group? What is the line? When you walk in, what is the line that you're like, okay, no, we got to stop. We can't let that go no further. What's the line?
Shorts.
Huh? But what is shorts? Shorts is like, shorts can come to your knees. What is shorts? Daisy Dukes. So
It doesn't cover jeans.
above the knee. So above the knee would be above the line. So is every lady in here, you stand up, can everybody, because if every lady stands over here, would every lady's knee be covered? But will every lady in here need to be covered? No. So you understand that? So what's the line that everybody can agree on now? What is the line?
I'll say the line short.
Above the knee.
Huh?
Above the knee.
About short dresses.
That's plural. She said showing breastism like plural, just so we understand that. I think well, plural is the same as individual. So I'm good. Anyway, but think about this. Nobody in here is actually showing their breast, so what is the line? How close can you go before you cross the line? How much? How many inches of cleavage can you show?
Almost down to the breast.
No cleavage at all. Will everybody pass that test here today?
Yeah.
You see my point? I'm trying to get us to understand something. I'm trying to get us to think here. Okay? You see, what we have to understand is that even your understanding, like her understanding, you know, when they left the house this morning, they believe like, well, we're modest today, but not everybody passed that test today. So what we have to understand is, what is that measurement? There has to be a measurement to where, okay, this is no longer modest, and you cross the line. See, all the ladies walked in here today, and nobody said nothing, so obviously that line didn't get crossed. What's the line? What is the absolute line that everybody like, stop, we got to take her in the back, we got to talk to her? What's the line?
Showing something.
Showing what? How far?
You want to make sure your skirt is all the way down, so you're going to be showing your bottom.
That's important, I guess, you know. And I'm messing with it on purpose, okay? I'm not just an exercise, just so we understand. So, right here is cool.
No.
No.
Because when you sit down, that's when
Yeah.
No bottom is showing.
You see the back part.
No bottom. She said when your bottom is showing.
You bend over.
I didn't think this was going to be that hard of a lesson today, but it's going to be tough.
Question.
Okay?
Where does the thigh begin?
The thigh begins at the knee.
Okay, so in the scriptures it says, if you uncover the thigh, it's shameful. So above the
But he goes on to, yeah, I understand that.
So that would, if we're gonna take the measurement, we're gonna take it from God, not with.
But there's other parts in here that he didn't, that still have not been addressed. I'm making my point here, okay? What you got to understand is that even in that culture, even in that culture, knees would have been. I'll even show you that. Even that culture, bottom of their legs would have been. So you have to understand here, he's actually talking about this particular one, he's actually talking about the daughters of Babylon. Okay, what they're doing. What I'm saying is we need to make sure we understand what is the line. Because when you understand that there's something very, very basic that God has actually spoken. There are certain things that God considered as nakedness. Now the question we have to ask ourselves, what is the line? In other words, we don't go no further than that. And see, the problem is that we never had that conversation, did we?
No.
To where all the ladies in the room, or in our culture of gathering here at the Church of Christ in this particular area, have come together and said, what is the line? Okay? And see, that's really a conversation that has to take place. Because I believe for me, when it comes down to men, most of us are covered up all the way. But I'm just saying, if Charmaine comes in, wearing old Elvis outfit, and I come in wearing young Elvis outfit, somebody needs to say something.
I will when I'm done.
No, see, I'm talking about the guys now. I'm talking about the guys now. If it comes down to it, yeah. So, see, Shemaine understood exactly what I was talking about because, you know, the deep plunge all the way down to here, chest out and everything, you know, your little gold chain, your rings on all your fingers, your rhinestones, your glasses and everything. And he's about to say, everybody turn your Bible and say, oh, I love Jesus. You can't look at nothing except that little view on his chest and everything, you know. You know, and he's like, and he's got on those really tight Elvis pants. He plays like, please, Shemaine, don't turn around. Walk backwards to the thing. You know what I'm saying? You're thinking, but nobody says, what is the line? You see my part? So, I'm trying to get us to understand something here. Even plain Jane. What we consider plain Jane today, we're not considered plain Jane in other countries. What is the line? We have to understand in our culture what the line is. And really to understand what the line is, you have to understand as ladies what it is that you understand as being, and have the conversation, what you understand as being immodest. But you also have to understand the reason why this was actually done, okay? Because you can't just consider what you feel to be immodest. You have to consider what your brothers look at too. You see, this is the whole point. What is the big difference? When we gather ourselves together in the church, even though I may be fully clothed head to toe, if I come in wearing an Elvis outfit, I am the center of attention, and I should not be the center of attention. I should not be. The whole goal of me showing up should not be for you to be looking at me. Let me take it one step further, just so you understand this. And I've said it many times in this gathering today. I'm going to ask everybody here, see if you remember this. Why do I wear a tie every Sunday?
So nobody get
Professional.
Because you want to look like me.
offended or offended.
See, the question is, can I be modest without wearing this tie?
Yeah.
So why do I wear this tie every single Sunday? No. So see, if I really have my choice, would I wear this tie every Sunday? Absolutely not. Matter of fact, if I dress the way I like to dress every single Sunday, I'd be here every single Sunday. Now, why do I wear this tie?
Do you hook your mic on?
Huh?
Do you hook your mic
To hook the mic on. No.
You always hook it on your tie.
Here's the thing. The reason I wear a tie is because in our society, the preacher wears a tie. And what I don't want to be, I don't want you to focus on me. I want you to focus on the message. I don't want to stand out to where you see me as standing out because Hal's showing up in his t-shirt and his flip-flops and his cargo pants feeling comfortable. I'm going to tell you, I think I can deliver a very effective message if I can wear my pullover shirt, my cargo pants, and my flip-flops because I'll be comfortable in it. But my point I'm making is I do this just so I don't stand out in front of everybody. See, part of modesty is that I don't stand out in front of everybody. Now, what we need to understand is that we need to think to ourselves. When we're trying to apply modest apparel, dressing, we cannot add things to what God has actually said. This is a very dangerous thing, okay? And because what happens is that when you go back and you look again from the scriptures, when you look at the church, okay? Show me in the church where you see Sunday clothes. It's not there. As a matter of fact, you have to understand when it comes down to when we judge a person based on the clothes that they're wearing, we're not talking about based on the clothes that they're wearing, or the classic clothes that they're wearing. You understand, he said, we sin. We sin when we do that. And you're going to see that. It's because what happens is if somebody comes in and they're wearing a nice suit, I'm paraphrasing what James is saying, wearing a nice suit, and you give them honor, you get to see you, brother, because they dress a certain way, and you give them a fine seat, and if somebody else comes dressed in and tattered clothes and everything, and you don't want anybody to come sit by you, you let them go sit in the back. See, when you make a judgment based on a man's clothes, you sin. We need to be very, very careful of that also. So, when we're doing this, we need to make sure we understand these principles. Yes?
You know, the thing here, God is the audience. This is his worship.
That's true.
That's commanded by him. God has always commanded the best that a person has.
Now now here's the thing. I understand what you're saying, sister, but you're gonna box yourself into something that's gonna actually not gonna work out. Let me tell you why. So when you offer God, you offer him the best of what you have. So here's the thing. I'm dressed here today. I'm dressed here today, okay? I got my tie on, I got my pants on, I got my shoes on, my shirt on. This is nowhere near my best clothes.
Yeah, but
Not even close.
That's not the point, though.
Well, that's the point she was making.
I know, but that's not the point.
No, I'm asking a question because.
I know supposed to give our best.
In our society, we don't think we think we can wear whatever we want to wear. We don't realize God is a king.
Mm-hmm.
He's
You
still
know,
looked at.
and we have kings in our society. We have presidents in our society. You know, and you know, but God is making reference to the nation of Israel. You offer lavish sacrifices. You offer
To me,
wine.
but offer that to your governor, see what you take it.
Yeah, offer to him.
We understood that part, but again, we're talking about, when we're talking about the temple itself, we're talking about the actual body itself, physical body itself.
It's a temple of God.
When you go back and you actually look, I'll just use a very simple example. The things that are in the 4 times required learning, okay? Now here's the question. When you actually understand the temple of old, or the tabernacle, which you have to understand, the tabernacle in the wilderness, let's think with it for a second now, okay? When God gave instructions on building the tabernacle, what instructions did he give first? The furniture, or for the tabernacle? The furniture. He gave instructions on what the inside, along the way he gave the furniture the outside. Here's the question you have to ask yourself. What was the outside of the tabernacle covered with? Was it beautiful?
No.
Not at all. Not at all. But the elaborate gold and inlays and stuff on the inside was just spectacular.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
That's what God met with people. Okay? Now today we're the temple of God. So my point I'm making is God more concerned with the inside of a person or the outside of a person? So we understand it to be true. But what we do is we put a whole lot of emphasis on the outside instead of the emphasis on the inside. Okay? Let me help you understand something here. Stefan, a person who is really, really concerned about how God sees them on the inside, it'll be manifest on the outside.
That's it.
A person who's really not concerned about what God sees on the inside is the person who likes to walk the line and get as close to the line as possible without crossing over. Because a person who's really concerned about how God sees them and how God wants them to be perceived by other people will manifest that on the outside. What's the point I'm trying to make here? You know, if my wife is professing to be a Christian woman and a godly woman and a godly wife, she's not going to show up to any gathering we have wearing Daisy Duke. It's just not going to happen. She's not going to do it. Now, is she going to do it inside the house where only I'm in there? Maybe. Okay? I'm not saying Cecilia got shorts like that. She really don't. But I'm just saying, my point is, she would not do that because her profession of faith and godliness will show on the outside. And even if her profession of faith and godliness, if she comes out wearing something in a location that location of people see as pushed above the line, instead of fighting against them, she'll just go change her clothes. Because she does not want to be the center of attention to make a stand like you have to accept me the way I am. You know, this dress is perfectly fine. My husband likes this dress. You can't tell me how to do it. I'm a grown woman. Y'all just need to stop looking and y'all won't have no problem. You see the jump? When a person is really concerned about what God sees, it will manifest itself on the outside. And even if they go into a culture, we go visit some other country. And her standard, or our standard in this location is lower than the standard over there, or higher than the standard over there. She'll adapt to make sure that nobody be offended. That's godliness. This is what Paul is saying when he's really talking about that I'll become all things to all people. In other words, not change doctrine. But if the only thing is that I have to look a certain way and dress a certain way or eat a certain way just so I don't offend you, then that's fine. Now, so I'm trying to help us understand. So, Beverly, you had a hand up, man?
No, I was just going to say, everybody was raised different. So my parents raised us to dress nice and clean, make sure it was clean and presentable.
But we have to understand again, that's a tradition. That is not something that's biblical.
Right.
Now, just so you want to say, here's the argument that comes up. Well, you know, in the days of the priests had to dress a certain way. That's true. That's true. But again, that's problematic. The priest had to dress a certain way. Okay? And what you have to understand, those things were a shadow, just for us to help understand some things. Because when you understand what the stones on the breastplate represented, it represented spiritual things. The spiritual adorning what it's about. It had nothing to do with the way you look on the outside. As a matter of fact, Jesus, those same people that dressed a certain way, Jesus condemned because they broadened the shoulders of their phylacteries just so they can have the praise of men.
Yeah.
See, we need to make sure we understand that this is not about how you look on the outside. Because once the inside has been addressed, it will manifest itself on the outside. You see, you'll be concerned about how people see you. Not because you worry about being liked by people, because you want to make sure that when people see you, they see Christ. They don't see something else. You see my point? So we need to understand that when we have certain levels, there's a certain line that has to be crossed. And what we have to do is we have to determine what is that line. So we must provide some principles to understand how we ought to use these opportunities to either adjust ourselves or to help others adjust themselves. So what we need to understand is fleshly lust, okay, is clearly condemned in the scriptures, okay? Let's make sure we catch this. Fleshly lust is clearly condemned in the scriptures. Romans chapter 13. Romans chapter 13. You see, let's begin in verse number 10. It says, love worketh no ill to his neighbor. Therefore love is fulfilling of the law. And that knowing the time, that now it is high time to awake out of sleep. For now is our salvation nearer than when we believed. The night is far spent, the day is at hand. Let us therefore cast off the works of darkness, and let us put on the armor of light. Let us walk honestly, as in the day, not in rioting and drunkenness, nor in chambering and wantonness, not in strife and in envy, but put ye on the Lord Jesus Christ, and make not provisions for the flesh, to fulfill the lust thereof. So, again, when you're talking about the flesh, it's talking about your physical body. We're addressing clothing, which clothes the physical body. Now, what you need to understand is, I'm going to tell you something from the standpoint of men. I don't want no other men to comment here because I don't want to get you in trouble with your wife. But I'm going to make a standpoint from the standpoint of men, okay? You would think that men's minds work like this. That a man's mind will be be presented with lustful thoughts and lustful feelings at the sight of seeing a totally naked woman. Let me help you understand something with me. A scantily clad woman, of what you possibly may see, messes with a man's mind more. Let me help you understand something here, just so you get this. A single man, I'm hoping single, I'm only going to talk single men today because there's no counting on the brothers in the room. We're all godly people. We don't look at them like that. Look, let me just help you guys out with something real quick. Now, let me help you guys out with something like that. Look, let me help you out with something here. I'll let all you guys put your head down and stuff like that. But see, I'm going to help you understand something here. Look. If, for example, a totally naked woman was walking down the street, we were like, what in the world is wrong with her? It's like, you would try to keep yourself distance from that, just to try to make sure, like, I don't know what she's up to, but I don't need to be no part of that, right?
Right.
But if a scantily clad woman is walking past, a lot of times you're like, now, hold on a second here. And let me tell you why, because just so you understand this. Because now you're trying to figure out, like, your opportunities now.
Right.
Anybody walking down the street naked is totally crazy, and you don't want nothing to do with that. And so a scantily clad woman really draws a man's mind. Let me help you understand something. If, for example, we talk about willpower here. Willpower, okay?
Yeah.
Willpower. You know, people talk about willpower, something like, I'm just talking to the guys now. Ladies, just hang on for a second. Talking to the guys now. I'm giving it to the ladies by way of information. You know, people talk about willpower is like a 1,500 or 12 or 2,000 calorie diet a day. That's not willpower. That's what willpower is. Willpower is when you're down at the beach and a lady's coming up wearing a bikini, right? Riding rollerblades and rollerblades past you. Willpower is not looking back.
That's it.
Come on.
That's true willpower. Because what you might see is what, the opportunity of what you might see is more intriguing. So what you have to understand, the way you dress has a way of activating a man's lust.
Yes. Yes. That's exactly right.
The way you dress activates a man's lust.
That's it. That's
You
it.
know?
The way they, yeah.
That's why me and Shemaine did not wear the Elvis suits with the plunge sleeves, because we don't want to, we don't want to activate. Women we're like, man, I wish my husband could look like Hal and Shemaine. Look at the bodies those guys have. They must work out in the same place, right? Why is that funny, Shemaine? I'm there laughing at us, man. Anyway, I lost my train of thought. So here's the thing. What we have to understand is that what we read inside the scriptures here is that we're not to make provisions for the flesh, to fulfill the lust thereof. Okay, so you think about this. Make no provisions for the flesh. Now, why do we wear clothing? Wearing clothing is making provisions to cover up nakedness. Okay? Consequently then, when we've been talking about clothing from the beginning, we have to understand clothing, when improperly worn or improperly applied, will bring about sinfulness.
Amen.
Or a lust.
Amen.
And we have to ask ourselves this question in our society that we live in. Where does that begin? So think about this from a lady's standpoint, because I'm telling you this about guys just so you get it.
Right.
It is never acceptable for your answer to why you dress the way you dress is that brothers should not be looking. That is not an acceptable answer. The question is that you're not supposed to give provisions for the flesh or for lust.
That's it. Amen.
You understand? And vice versa.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
We have to say, when you're trying to figure this out,
Yes.
instead of thinking about the knees and the ankles and the arms, you have to understand it's like, for example, here's a conversation that's never taken place, I think, among any of the brothers in this room, just so you get it. Man, we was downtown that day, that girl walked by and we saw her ankles. Woo! Them ankles up, right? You never heard no guy say that at all. Or they were ashy. Unless they were ashy. You don't say that. Boy, them elbows, them elbows. Oh my gosh. You know why? Because the elbows don't excite men in this society. But what if you're in a society where ankles and elbows do excite men? You cannot make provisions for the flesh. What if you're in a society where hair being worn down and loose is provision for men to lust? You cover it up. Y'all starting to see the point I'm making here? Is that what it is? And she probably thinks, I need to cover Stefan up. My goodness. And he's modest too. You know what I'm saying? I have a joke all the time because I always talk about I was at every time I go to Harbor Freight. So the lady at the Harbor Freight says, "Can I get a telephone number?" I'm like, please don't call that telephone number. Because me and you gonna have a problem. My wife ain't gonna like that too much. And she's like, just messing with us, because I know what happens. Because I'm dressed in my grungy clothes, and I'm looking up. I said, because I know when all the ladies in here see me, they see woman candy. But I just need you to know, I belong to a private stock. Anyway, let me quick. Just making sure everybody knows that, you can look at the rapper. That's all. That's it. No samples here. Did I mention I'm modest too? So we have to understand, an astonishingly great number of men are of the opinion that women are more attractive when they're partly dressed than nude. They prefer to see women partially disrobed in light of complete nakedness. That has to be led up to. Let me know how men's minds operate here. So mini clothes or short dresses or mini clothes are very seducing to a man. Okay? And so when we ask where it is leading, we have to understand that what a miniskirt or exposing clothes, bodily part exposed clothing, where it leads a man's mind to is toward sexual activity. I know you don't want to hear it, but that's exactly what it does. It gives provision for the flesh. And I just want you ladies to understand it. I want the ladies to have a conversation in their own to try to help ladies understand how to apply this.
Yeah.
But my point I'm trying to make is I'm trying to help you understand why God has actually called certain things nakedness, and why we need to make sure we understand that nakedness, or giving provision for the flesh, or sexual lust is actually spoken against.
Yeah.
And what you have to understand, when uncomely parts are presented in the fashion that they should not be presented, there's an issue. And so our whole thing should not be, well, they should not be looking. No, we're talking about the standard for ourselves as Christians.
Yeah.
And as a man, we need to dress a certain way.
Amen.
And as women, we need to dress a certain way, considering our brothers, considering our sisters.
Well, yeah, when I worked in the high school, I had girls coming in with these low-cut blouses and these short shorts. And I had young men who could not focus on the lesson at all. And I knew what was going on. And I said, no, we have a dress code. You wanted to think right now, those are going to change, you going home or something. But my young men in the classroom could not focus.
Okay.
They were focused on you and how to get next to you, and I knew exactly what was going on.
Now, we're talking about issues facing the church.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
So let me help you understand something, ladies, very, very quickly from a man's standpoint in the church. For something you to think about. Because you say, like, well, my knees ain't showing, right? I don't have anything uncovered, when I'm standing up straight or whatever, right? Here's what you have to understand. See, we're standing up here. There's been many times that I've had to, when I used to preach, and I go to another place to preach, and ladies want to sit on the edge, sit on the front row and everything, got a dress on, it was pretty modest when they walk in, but cross their legs and I can't look at them now. I can't look at them because the way their dress hikes up when they sit down. Because they never considered what somebody sees when they sit down. Let's take it one step further. You have to also understand when we're passing the collection plate or we're passing the offering, the Lord's Supper, men are standing over you. So looking straight ahead, we may not see nothing. When we're standing right next to you like this, we see an angle that you don't think about sometimes. You have to consider these things. Okay? The whole goal should not be, well, none of the ladies have a problem with it, and I've actually met the line of modesty. You have to consider that you give no opportunity for the flesh.
Amen.
Now, I'm telling you that as a man, okay? Yeah. Because I realize that for me, it's like, if, for example, just so you get this, if a young lady, or even a very attractive older lady, I'm not throwing anybody under the bus, walks by in a very revealing dress, and you don't look, you're not godly, you're dead. Now, you say, how you're a godly man? Like, stop playing like you don't notice.
Yeah,
with maturity, you learn just to not look altogether.
Yeah.
But to say that you didn't notice, you ain't godly, you're just dead. Okay, that's the only way that's going to happen. So I'm saying that, ladies, you need to consider this when it comes down to the way men operate. Some men are very, very good at just looking the other way because they don't want their wife to see them that they saw it.
Oh, it's too late.
Right? Others because they don't want nobody to see that they notice. The whole point is that we need to also be responsible for each other. Don't think that because you're among men that have been in the church 20, 30, 40, 50 years, that you can dress any way you want to and they're not going to notice. Consider your brothers. Brothers, the same thing. Consider your sisters. Stop wearing pants where you can count the amount of change you got in your pocket. From the outside.